Okay.
That week, I knew that God was real and that He loved me, and I'd never be alone.
Coming out of the water was different.
This is my story.
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 This is my story. Hi, I'm Juanette Elizabeth Brownlow, but most of you know me as Nettie. You're going to know me maybe from the garden table where I do supply a lot of baked goods, security ministry, which I help out on, servant ministry, or just generally anywhere around first service. Well, my husband and I had moved to Mount Zion to be closer to family, and one day we came home and there was a bag on our door. And we were like, that's unusual. Usually there's flyers, something, not usually a bag. And we saw it and it was a nice little Easter bag, and we're like, oh, this is really cute. And I was in the mood for some candy and started opening it, and there was an awesome message, and it said it was from Antioch Christian Church, and was explaining, basically the story of Easter and how there's going to be an empty egg that represents the empty tomb. And that really just caught our attention. We had been looking kind of for a church. We hadn't really started the full-on search, but we knew we wanted to find a local church. And lo and behold, Angie Rushing was the one that egged our house. And we came for Easter about a year ago and jumped right in. And then we've been here ever since.
So it's the good kind of egging.
It was. I always like to tell people our house was egged, and they look at me like, why would you go to that church? And then I explain. So it's a very good conversation starter. Growing up, I came from just a single mom, single working mother. She was divorced when I was 2, so I saw my dad, but he wasn't in the picture all the time. Very small family, so basically growing up, it was just my mother and I. So I was, a spoiled only child of a single mom who worked hard to kind of build up everything that she had. And so from watching her and everything, that's kind of how I formulated, I guess, how I am today. And she instilled a lot in me. So that was my family growing up. My family now that I live in Mount Zion, I married a wonderful man, Nathan Brownlow, that you guys probably all know. He does security and everything else as well. His family has been amazing since the passing of my mother, and they've really incorporated me. So his mother and father are my mother and father. I grew up an only child. I now have a brother and sister, so it's awesome. So I'm really getting kind of a different sort of family life now, this second part of my life, and I'm really enjoying it.
That's fun. What's like the biggest difference in your families that's like?
The sound. Like, my mom was a very quiet ex-Air Force, very precise, but she spoke really soft. So a lot of times you had to strain to pick up what she was saying, versus the Brownlow family, which is bam. As soon as you walk in the door, there's dogs running, there's noise, there's commotion. And at first it caught me off guard. And now I love it. I go to family functions and I'm like, bring on the noise, because it's different than what I grew up with. And you can just feel all the love amongst all the commotion. My current job, I work for the state of Illinois with child support services. So I always have to explain that to people. It's not DCFS. A lot of people assume it is. We handle child support for the state of Illinois. So if you owe child support, all that nice sort of stuff, we're going to be the ones that enforce it. I actually handle training the regional staff that assist customers day to day with their casework. So for me, it's a big deal because I get to ensure that families throughout Illinois get the service that they require by making sure that my employees all know the tasks that they need to do and how to do them accurately. So for me, being a civil servant is a really good thing because I take that desire to serve and help people and use that in my work. This year, Nate decided we need to get kayaks. And I was like, okay, I'm going to drop some money on kayaks. I've never been kayaking. Don't even know if I like kayaking. But he got me out on Lake Decatur. And after the first time, I was like, I love kayaking. So this summer, anytime we could, me, him, and his brother, get out there on the lake. So that's become my big hobby. And now that the weather's turning, I'm already looking at next year. Can we plan some kind of trip to, a river or something in Missouri and do that? So kayaking has now become my go-to thing. to say BLT. That's always my go-to. Most places I go, if I'm not sure what to get, because I'm not sure what their lunch meat's like, I can usually count on a BLT. So that's going to be my go-to. I'm going to say that I talk with my hands. And the reason why I say that, and I try to control it, is when I'm in meetings and I'm in trainings, I see people watch my hands more than they watch me. So my parents were in the military, and my mom always used to laugh that I never saw them stand in parade rest, but that's how I stand if I'm trying to hide my hands. And so I don't want to stand like I'm a correctional officer or military member, but if I don't, my hands flail about, and that might be it. And sometimes I think my bubbly personality can grate on people, just not in a bad way. I just think they think, why is she always so upbeat? And I'm human, but being down all the time isn't going to get me anywhere. So clothes. And I don't mean just like every day. I have clothes. Nate will tell you that our old home had a huge walk-in closet the size of like a bedroom. And it was filled, except for a very small portion, with my clothes. When we moved, I downsized, but I can't not buy clothes. And so I should throw out something when I get something, but I can't. And so that is probably one of my things that maybe not throw out, but donate, because they're always in really good condition still. So my thing would be clothes, really. Spiders. I have had arachnophobia. I'm going to let everybody know one of my fears right now since I was little. But though I do not love them, Nate has taught me the value of spiders, because every living thing does have its place in our world. And so he has taught me the value. I love gardening. And so I do know that they do help in a way. However, I would like them to stay far, far away from me. So scariest animal is spiders. It's going to be between, so like iMessage or Facebook. I am going to have to admit, Facebook sucks me in with those reels at night. You just get down a rabbit hole of scrolling, and then I realize I need to do something better with my life. And then iMessage, just because what wife doesn't need to text their husband randomly about what they need from the store, or, hey, can you please do this? This cat on a hot tin roof with Elizabeth Taylor and Paul Newman. Big reason why I also love that movie, because as a kid, I just thought it was great that it came out in 1958, the year my mom was born. So it's like, this movie is old. But it's one of those, and I even convinced Nate to watch it eventually. He thought it was going to be a romance movie, and he was like, this movie was completely different. It just shows kind of the dysfunctions of a family, and eventually how you kind of heal maybe traumas and stuff that have gone on throughout maybe your family and relationships. And it's just one of those movies that my mom and I would put in. So I would recommend it, basically hoping that somebody would like it and get the same joy I got out of it. So that would be the movie I would recommend. This is going to be such a corny answer, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would choose, and it's not expensive, Charo. And the reason being, Nate and I go there a lot, just on random date nights. And I like that place. I like the atmosphere. So, I mean, if somebody was like, where do you want a free meal? You know what? I would go there. I know that that's a place I could get Nate to go. It's not too swanky, but it's just right. My normal breakfast is liquid in a can on my way down the highway of Red Bull. You guys, if you've seen me at the door on Sundays, I usually have my sugar-free Red Bull to keep me going, give me those wings. So I usually drink that, and then usually around 9:30 or 10, I have a protein shake. So I guess protein shakes would be my breakfast of choice. My family, I sound like a broken record, I know, but Nate, I just being with my family and my husband, and just surrounded by love with people that I can be my weird, quirky, bubbly self. And they just look at me like, okay, Nettie. And, they fire back, and we can just laugh and talk. And there's not a care in the world for however long I'm with them. And so my family, without a doubt, is, yeah, that's definitely it. Really, for me, it's just sitting, it sounds bad, vegging out, flipping through those Facebook reels or watching TV at home on the couch, cat in my lap, dog sitting down at the end of the couch, husband in his chair, and just relaxing. That is, for me, the best way to just kind of, if I'm just wanting to spend some time and not do anything, yeah, that's perfect for me. I was a Barbie girl. Like any birthday, holiday, if you bought me a Barbie, or back in the day, they used to have those big things of clothes you get. Yeah, Barbies. That was my thing. I had any and all Barbies I could get. So that, and a lot of people always look at me surprised because I'm not like a pink glittery girl, but
No, but what I
Barbies.
heard was clothes.
Yeah, see, that was the clothes addiction. It started with Barbie. This answer is weird, so it may not make the cut, but it's the honest to God truth. So old school bars, when you used to be able to smoke and you had that kind of smoky liquor smell. And I say that, and this sounds so bad, but when I was younger in Ohio, my dad used to take me to the NCO, so the Non-Commissioned Officers Club, that was on base. And it was like a little pub for, like non-commissioned officers in the Air Force. But there was an ice cream shop next to it. So we would go there. He would hang out with his friends. Usually he wouldn't drink because he had his kid with him and we were on a bike. So good dad for him, but he had to go visit his friends and they would usually give me a little soda pop out of the fountain. So I thought I was somebody sitting at the bar. And just that smell, I think, is more of just the memory of like my father going to like the ice cream shop afterwards. So it's more of just that nice nostalgic, yeah, not a smell that people are usually like, that's great, but of course it's Nettie. So I have actually discussed this with Nate, and this is a great question. I would go back to, and I would have to look up the exact year, but the years that my mother was in California with the Air Force. I would love to see my mom in that light. I love pictures of her of that time. She was young and fit and energetic and at discos and like living her best life. And even if I didn't interact, I would just love for a minute to be like, oh, that's what she was like. So like, everybody, a lot of people want to go to historic things or meet certain people. I want to go creep and spy on my mom. My biggest fear, oh, here's going to come the tears, losing loved ones. After my mom died, that became real, that's an option. I knew it was, but you just don't know it until it hits you. And then you're like, oh, people die and they're going to leave me at some point. And so losing family, whether it's Nate, his parents, my newfound siblings, just losing the people I love and them not knowing that I love them. So, yep, that would be it. I'm going to say Germany. I was born on Hahn Air Force Base in Germany, and I've always just wanted to go back to see where that was. I don't think it's still an open functioning Air Force base anymore. The last thing I knew, it was kind of just a village in the middle of nowhere, but I kind of want to go back and see it. I've got pictures from when I was born, and it looks like it was just a tent city sort of thing. So I would just like to see, Germany and where I was born. I like World War II history, so there's a lot there that, if given the chance, I would go and just geek out on historical things, see Han Germany, and enjoy myself. I'm going to say bubbly because that is one that I have heard multiple times from people at work, and I'm like, I'm hoping that's a good thing. They say it is. Loving because I try to make sure that whether I know you really good or not, that, especially in the job that I'm in, that I'm there, I care, I do see you and I value you as a person, regardless of whether or not we have the same beliefs or anything like that. And then unique, because I know that we're all unique, but I have never met a person like me. And that is the thing that people always are kind of like surprised by things with me. And I mean, I kind of like that. I don't want to be something that you can just look at the cover and guess what you're going to get. I like throwing out those like, hey, I do like to dress up in weird costumes, and I like to cook and kayak and fish and do a little bit of everything. So yeah, I would say those are the words that describe me.
Okay.
Caffeine. I was trying to think of everything. I was gonna say sweets, but I'm like, no, I've given those up pretty good before in the past. Caffeine though, it gets me whether it's Diet Coke, sugar-free Red Bull, a little bit of chocolate. Caffeine, yeah, that's gonna get me every time. And if you really want to get me, because the time of year it is, and Dunkin' just opened, a Dunkin', anything from Dunkin' that's pumpkin spice with some caffeine in it. Being a spouse. And the reason why I say that, and a lot of people would say parent, and maybe if I was a parent, I would go parent route, but I say spouse because it takes building that relationship, and it is work. I mean, you have to understand someone and their good and their bad, and you have to stay true to them regardless of what's going on. You're not going to always love your spouse in every facet of what they are, but you have to stay true to them and be supportive and provide that love and that comfort that they need, so that when you do want to have a family or anything does happen, you have that foundation. You can't be a good mother, a good father without starting as a good spouse and really having that love and that connection. So
I want to ask a question. I don't know if it's insensitive, so you are welcome to
no,
say.
I'm an open book.
Okay.
It takes a lot to really.
Now, you have mentioned that you don't have children.
Yes.
And one of my pet peeves for couples is for people to constantly nag them, well, are you going to have kids?
Yeah.
However, you're a little older.
Yes.
Did you guys decide not to have kids? Or, is that what brought you to that decision? Or was that like if that's nosy?
No, that's that's
because
perfectly fine.
fertility challenges are common. So
No, you are. I actually have a friend that's finally pregnant that went through fertility
Yay.
challenges. So no, I got to hear all that from her, and it is very hard if you are really wanting a child and it's hard to conceive. So I see that was very difficult for her. For Nate and I, it was different. We met, and once we started dating, we knew that we really loved each other and that connection was there. And so being adults, Nate was just, do you want kids? And at first I was kind of caught off guard because I was like 28 and no, I never really thought about kids a lot. I was never the girl. I played with Barbies, but I never had a baby doll. I never had that. I never pictured I'm going to get married, have 10 kids, or anything like that. That was never my thoughts when I was younger. And so it took me a minute, but I was like, no, I've always said that I didn't want kids. And at the time, to be honest, he was like, well, should I get a vasectomy? We're trying to be responsible adults. If we don't want kids, we would have loved it with, all of our heart and soul had we had a child, but if we don't want them, don't accidentally have a child. But I said, well, I'm not sure. We went on a trip to Arizona to see Nate's cousin, Ryan. I had never met him. He invited us out there. We were out there for 12 or 13 days, me, Nate, and his brother, Ricky. We went out there, saw the Grand Canyon, went to all these awesome places, went on his boat on Lake Powell, had a great time. That, though, was by far the longest I've ever been away from home. Being an only child of a single mom, that was my best friend. So usually if she was going somewhere, I was going somewhere. And so, 12 days being gone, though, it was great. By the time we got home, I could not wait to get in my own bed and eat my own food and shower in my own shower. But it was a great time. I'm going to say probably going away for college. And the reason why I think about, I say that is because when I was in high school, I think like junior, senior year, I got a lot of offers from like Columbia University, like things that were like far away. I'm not an adventure taker like that by default. I like to be home. I was a, only child, single mom. I was not going to leave my mom. We didn't have a lot of family. And so sometimes I think, maybe going away to college, like, what would that have been like? Would that have shaped me into a different person? Would I like big cities more? Would I, it's things like that. But then I'm like, it's kind of like FOMO, but then you're like, but I turned out great. I have a husband that I love and a great family and a great church and, great job. So it's one of those. would have been cool if I could do like that choose your own adventure book, put your finger on that page and go down that hole and be like, all right, that was fun, but then come back. So yes, I missed out on that, but am I sad about it? No, because I'm right where I'm supposed to be. So my mother's saying, and it's even on a plaque that they have at work for her, and it says, it is what it is. And that is, I, growing up, was a very high strung, like, oh, this isn't right. What's going on? And my mom would just be like, it is what it is. Even when she was passing, when she was sick, it is what it is. She was like, no amount of screaming or crying is going to change this. She was like, no amount of negativity or complaining. And so a lot of people hear you say that it is what it is, like, oh, she's just nonchalant. No, for me, it's a reset. It is what it is. I can't change it. Can I adapt? Can I overcome? Can I make it work? Yeah, I can. So it is what it is. Self-confidence. I am a very bubbly person, and people think that means self-confidence. You just exude it. There's something called imposter syndrome. And I think everyone has it to a degree, because you kind of always are like, am I fitting in right? Am I doing what I'm supposed to? But for me, sometimes, like even with my job, people tell me, hey, like you put together this checklist, it was great, or you did this training. And then deep inside, I'm like, did they really see that training? Are they sure that it was as good as they say it is? And I know that it is, because it's been put in front of higher ups and everything, but I'm still kind of, do they really know who they hired to be the regional trainer? Are they sure? And so inside, I still sometimes feel like that little high school girl that's kind of sitting in the back of the room like, My big love language, one of them is food. I I like to cook. So if I'm going to have you over and anything, any sort of event, I'm going to cook for you. That is the way I'm going to show that I love you. That's the way that my grandmother showed her love for everybody, was always cooking big things of food for the family. My mother, no matter when I was growing up, how tight money was or anything, food was always the like, hey, come have dinner. Figuring out, okay, well, that's your favorite food. All right, this Sunday we're going to have that, and so food for me, sitting down to a nice meal that I've prepared for people I love and them enjoying it and us spending that time, that means more to me than any gift I could give or get or receive. So I always notice people's eyes. That is always, and I'm also one of those people that I think sometimes make people uncomfortable because I will stare at you while you're talking, but it's my way of showing you that I am fully paying attention to you, and you've got my attention. So I typically look at people's eyes. From that, you can gauge, they are a window to the soul. You can gauge kind of how they're receiving you, what's going on. You might go up to somebody and say, hey, how are you? And normally they're really nice, but you look in their eyes and you can tell that today something's just not right. And so either you provide that extra comfort or to give space. And so for me, the eyes really do tell me a lot. Well, this is a funny one. And Nate's heard this one a million times, but when I was gonna say 7th grade, it was sometime in middle school, my mother and I used to love the Atlanta Braves. Being a single mom and, having a younger child, we were like, well, we're not going to go to Atlanta. That's kind of far. Don't have the money. But we can go to, we can go to Busch Stadium. That's where we saw them, because we've seen them at Wrigley Field. But hey, we've never been to Busch Stadium. And it was the old Busch Stadium, not the new one, the very old one. We're going to drive up there. We got tickets. We went up there. It was great. Rented a car, got there. Hotel was great. Game was all right. I think the Braves may have lost. There was a rain delay, whatever. On the way back, however, this is back before GPS in your car, and I didn't print the MapQuest route back. So we go driving, and we end up in Indiana. Terre Haute. There we go, Indiana, right across that state line. My mom's driving. I look up, and I'm like, welcome to Terre Haute, Indiana. My mom looks at me. So we pull in the rust thing. There's other people there from Illinois trying to figure out, how did we end up in this weird portal of a place? It took us a while of backtracking, but like forever, that would always be our funny thing of, this is why we don't go on car trips, because we end up in other states. And so it's, even though at the time it was a little bit panicky, afterwards it became just this running joke with us. And I always love to think about that. Memory is August 26th at about 1 in the morning, going up to say goodnight to my mom. She was sick, home on hospice. We knew it was toward the end. She was pretty much out of it. You know, you give them medicine, they're not really coherent. But looked in. My mother-in-law, who is an angel, stayed with us for like a week. She was in the hospital with my mom, then came home, and she was sleeping in a recliner next to my mom. And I looked in and I was like, Nate, I don't think she's breathing. And so Nate, being my champion that he is, went up and was like, no, she's not. And that is the worst memory I have, is looking in and seeing my mom look like she's perfectly sound asleep, but realizing that's the last time I'm going to see my mom. So
How did you process that? I mean, you two were peas and pods.
she went, I think the grace that she had, how much faith she had and where she was going. She didn't make it a big ordeal. She didn't cry, complain. Her only complaint was she wanted to come home. So when she was in the hospital, get me home. She wanted to see her dog. She wanted to see her cat. She wanted to lay in her bed because this hospital bed is not comfortable. And once she got home, she was good. And so, yes, it was hard. But the fact that my mom had raised me to be strong, she had everything in line. So she had her insurance and everything. So I didn't have to worry about some of the things other people have to worry about when they lose a loved one. So that really helped. And just, I think knowing that she went with such peace, it was a lot better. She went quick. She went in her sleep. I did everything I could do as a daughter to fulfill her wishes. I got her home. We handled everything the best we could. So it was very hard, but knowing that I did what I could and knowing that her faith, that brought her peace. I know where she is. I know that I'm going to see her again. So I don't see her now, but I talk to her I talk to her all the time. I know she's up there waiting, and I know when I get there, it's going to be a glorious, reunion. So yeah, it's sad now, but this is a blip. I've got eternity to spend with her. So I don't know. Her death was kind of my jumping off spot, if you will. I mean, I was always Christian, but just seeing how faith was so comforting to her, and I don't know, just her whole passing kind of just reignited that in me, because it did show me that this isn't forever. This feels like forever. This isn't forever. This is literally, you blink and it's gone. Our eternity, that is forever. And so that made me realize, like, all this stuff I've thought all these years, oh, this is all important. I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. Yes, I've always been Christian, but Jesus has always been there. Kind of, okay, Jesus in the background, graduation, Jesus is there, thank you, but it's not been where Jesus was the forefront of my life until it's like, okay, hold on, wait a minute. I see your work. Let me come around. Let me bring you to the forefront of my life and not just be, yeah, I'm a Christian. I go to church sometimes. I celebrate Christmas. No, let me actually, let this envelop me. Let me become a part of the church. Let me, spread the word. And so, tragedy, but, sometimes out of tragedy, some of the best things happen. So you have to find the silver lining. And my mom would tell me it is what it is. And she would look at me and be like, are you seriously crying on camera right now talking about me? So it's just a lot of that. Just, faith just really brought me a lot of comfort and let me know everything's going to be all right. You'll make it through. Even though you don't think you will, you will. I'm going to be honest, Nathan, I was always Christian, but Nathan's family, they've run kind of their own Bible studies, and they've usually been more involved than I was growing up. I prayed, I knew the Bible, I knew stuff like that, but I wasn't as involved. And even before my mom's passing, talking to Nathan, we would get into talks about Christianity and different things. And I knew what being Christian meant, but I didn't know if that makes sense. I know it means you accept Jesus. Okay, cool. I've been baptized, accept all that, but I didn't know what it really meant to like have Jesus in your life, to make room for Jesus. Like we do have the song that we play that. And so whenever I hear that, make room for you, I'm like, that is true. Like you do have to physically make room for Jesus, because if not, the rest of the world will fill you up so fast. And so Nate, through talking to him, we would talk about things. And then he actually started listening to the podcast that we both listened to. And I would listen to one, and then I'd ask him questions because he's got a little bit more background, and his dad is more studied in the Bible. And so I would ask him, and he'd be like, well, I don't know, let's ask Pops, you know? And so then we would kind of bounce things off of each other. Well, how did you interpret this passage or this podcast message? Well, I interpret it this way. Or, you know, I'm going to be honest, sometimes we listen to it and things are said that we're like, I don't like that. I don't want to believe that about myself, or I don't want to, but you know what? That's what the Bible says. So whether I want to believe it or I like it, it's true. And so just through talking with Nate and really his faith, that I'm going to be honest, when we first got together, I didn't know that was such an integral part of him, because he doesn't like to talk about it sometimes, because people do want to maybe sometimes bash down on your faith. And he's like, I don't want to fight for my, you know, he'll fight for his faith, but he does not want to get into fights because of his faith. So, but getting that out of him and just seeing really too, even before my mom, the peace that it brought him. And just, my husband's such a great man that he's Christian. Well, I don't know, that made me want to bring Christianity more and bring Jesus more into my life, because, well, I mean, my husband is a great man and this is what he believes. So like, it can't be horrible, and he's such a loving guy, you know? And so that really, just those conversations with him just really opened my eyes. And I was like, there's more to this than just saying, I'm Christian. There's actually, okay, so you're Christian, now what? And so then you go forth and you're like, all right, I'm Christian, here I am. I serve, I do X, Y, and Z. And you're able to admit that, yeah, sometimes do I always still, you know, make room for Jesus as much as I should? I'm going to be honest. No, there are days where I'm so full of things from work and stuff that I don't. But then I put that podcast on the way home, and it's a smack in the face. Like, hey, wait a minute. You didn't make room for me. Or I'll put on, I have a couple of songs like that, you know, they be singing like praise here on my iTunes, and I'll put that on and I'll listen to that and just kind of, okay, hold on. Make the room, make the space, breathe. Let Jesus in, because a lot of times when I'm high strung, if I simply am like, okay, Jesus, I know, and I just let it wash over me, things usually, you know, quiet down, and I can't change everything. And so, yeah, so I just, Nate, I know this is going to turn into Nate, my story, but just really, I don't know, really just that, I think just his love, and then him expressing that, and us just having those lines of communication really just opened it up. After the death of my mom, just the way everything fell into place, even though I mentally was not prepared to move, to do all this stuff, things just started happening. You know, insurance worked out the way it should. We bought a house, we sold our house. I started, because I wasn't in the job that I'm in now, I got this promotion. Like, it was like everything worked out the way it should, even though the circumstances were horrible. And I was like, you know, a lot of times you think it would have been easy to sit in your pity and be, this is so horrible. Why did God do this to me? Well, you know, first of all, God didn't do it to me. God did it to my mom. Not really. But you know, I know. See, that was not going to make it on camera, but that was a good laugh. But it's, I'm sorry. But you know what I mean? It was one of those, why sit there and just sulk? Like, yes, life was hard, and did I want to get up every day and go deal with, like, you know, the attorney dealing with escrow? Did I want to have to go to work? Because I work in the same agency that my mom worked in for 25 years. We work with a lot of the same people. Like, a lot of people after my mom's death were emailing me, coming up to me. I loved your mom. She trained me. I worked with her. And so that was hard in of itself, because these people are grieving and you're grieving. And yeah, I can't break down and cry at work because that's just not who I am, but I wanted to. But just the fact that there was this inner strength and peace that came over me that I can't explain, other than it was God. There's nothing else that can explain how I was able to still hold it together and still have this calm resilience and know that no matter what happened, I was going to be okay. No matter if I stumbled and fell, it was going to work out. And so, I mean, that's when I was really like, oh, okay, there's something to this. It's not just like you turn on TV and somebody's like, oh, I felt the Holy Spirit. It's like, no, I feel it. I know that it's here because God's with me. He's making sure I'm okay. And so that was really my turning point of being like, okay, I gotta do this. I gotta make this part of my life versus just, I've been baptized Christian, make it, okay, I'm, I'm Christian, part of me. And so, yeah, that's when I saw God working for real. I'm a very like hands-on, I like to see proof of things. When I was younger, it was easy to question God. I can't see you. I can't knock on your door and say, hey, let's sit down and talk. I've got questions. There was nothing that I couldn't go directly to God in the sense that like, hey, I want answers right now. I need you to tell me X, Y, Z. When I pass, what's going to happen? There was nothing that I could say physically, here you go, Juanette. Here's the manual, which I now know is the Bible. But, when you're 14, 15, in your mind, you don't want the Bible. You want a manual from start to finish that tells you this is what you need to do. Or some big proof because you're young. You want that tangible evidence. And so I think being younger and having those questions, but not voicing them, just kind of keeping them in, not because if I would have went to my mom would have been like, okay, hold on, no, let's go to a church. Like, we need to figure this out. Let's talk about it, but keeping it in and trying to understand religions myself. So when I was younger, I was very much read about a lot of different religions because I'm trying to, I like to find the commonalities in things. So, okay, so I'm Christian, but why is there Buddhism? Why are there all these other ones? If Christianity is the answer, then where are these other ones coming from? Then there must be questions. Is God real? Because there's also all these other gods, And so I think having that and not voicing it and not seeking out the proper channels kind of held me back because I always had a little skepticism. And I'm going to just say, when I was younger, being Christian and like bubbly, like how I am, reminded me like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't want to be the Ned Flanders. You didn't want to be the bubbly Christian girl that was like, hi, I'm, howdy ho, neighbor. Yeah, howdy doodly. You didn't want to do that. So when I was young, that was a turnoff. I didn't want to be that person. You didn't want to be seen as like the nerdy Christian girl. And so it's easier to question things and not. And now that I'm older, I'm perfectly fine with it. Yeah, am I quirky? Yeah, am I Christian? Yeah, am I going to tell you about going to my church's car show and the stuff that I do? Yeah, I am. And that's just it. And if you don't like it, then you're probably just not going to be somebody that hangs out with me. So God is teaching me, honestly, to not be so selfish. God's teaching me to make time for things that before I'd be like, I don't have time to volunteer for something. I work from 8:30 to 5. I'm tired. I drive. There's always these good excuses for why you can't do things. Now, have I had to scale back on some things? Yes, because my job's kind of taken a toll and I do have other things, but I have time. So there was always that, I just don't have enough time. Well, you know what? Make time. So if that means that I work security for service or, I come in and do, even if it's just an hour function, to give of myself and to not be selfish and to not think, oh, well, I need to sit in the bathtub for an hour and decompress when I could be doing, no, that's fine. You can make time for those things. You can't make time, to serve and be a good person and to fulfill what you're supposed to do on this earth. So being less selfish and just making sure that I give as much of myself as I can, while also being healthy and, within reason, but making sure that I do serve and also get outside my comfort zone. So that's another thing for me too. So people always think this is strange when I say that I used to say I was more introverted. I don't always jump into things, but then everyone at the church is like, really? You don't jump into things? You say, okay. So maybe it's Jesus. Like that. I think it really is that I come here and I feel that calling. But I think for Nate and I, we knew that church was more than just attending. We knew that when you go to church, we wanted a church where we could serve, where it was a group of people that needed our service. When we lived in Springfield, we thought about joining a bigger church, but there's so many people that when you volunteer, they have a waiting list for volunteers. And I'm like, not that they don't appreciate the service, but I wanted a place that when I serve, I know pretty much everybody by name or face or, that kind of thing. And so we knew already that we wanted to be servants. And so when we joined, we looked through, like, oh, garden ministry, oh, security, oh, property ministry. We saw all these things that we knew we had talents that the church needed. And so we were like, well, let's give of ourselves as much as we can and in any way that we can in the areas that we're good at. And so where we saw the need, we just jumped right in. And so I think it's that being called to service and also understanding that coming to church every Sunday is great. Yes, please do worship. That is exactly it. But you also have to fellowship. You have to find that connection and make it a church family, rather than just a group of people that you go to church with. Am I fulfilling my purpose? That's what it would be. So am I doing what you called me to do, or am I doing what I want to do? And if he says, yeah, you are, all right. If he shows me a sign and says, no, you aren't, then okay, I need to take a stop, do a turn, pivot, and go the direction he sends me. So I'm going to be honest, up until we joined the church, I never really thought I had, and this is going to sound bad, like a true talent. I know people that can sing, they can dance, they can play instruments, they can do all this stuff. And I'm like, I can sing enough not to shatter glass and pick up an instrument. I might be able to do it. But from coming here, serving is really what I am good at, whether it is cooking food for people, holding the door open, security, doing like servant ministry. I didn't know that was kind of an inherent, I guess, skill of mine. And it's something that I find a lot of joy in, that I not like I ever looked down about. I just never thought about like, oh, that's a thing, but it really is. I really do. It brings me happiness, bringing other people happiness. I get to use some of my skill sets like cooking and hospitality kind of things. And I just love it. And so that was one of the things I've told Nate, like I didn't really know that I had that in me. And so that's why if there's functions, you'll find me in the kitchen, you'll find me doing something because I like it. It's fulfilling for me and I get to give back. For me, I get an endorphin rush because I've gotten to feel, help somebody else feel good. And I just think that people don't know that they need that as much. In our society, it's easy to get disconnected, but yet feel connected with your phones. And so that actual connection and the care and just knowing that someone's there and they care, whether it's some food, a hug, anything, people need that. And it's also okay to say you need that. And so I think sometimes for us, we just don't know, and we don't know that we can say, hey, yeah, I need a little love and a little extra care. And so those of us that are called to serve in whatever capacity, that's what we're here to do. You need the love. Okay, we'll give you the love. We'll help you however we can. And hopefully by doing that, I make your day better, even if it's for a few minutes, even if the rest of your day doesn't go the way you planned, but you're like, hey, Juanette shook my hand, gave me a hug, first service at the door. Maybe that did it for you. Maybe that's all you needed that Sunday to kind of, get you back on the right track. And if not, hopefully I just helped you feel better for a brief moment. I don't think I really knew what to call it. I think people have always said throughout my life, like my grandmother was known as being a really compassionate woman. She would give you the shirt off her back. My mom was very much the same. And so I always heard that they were compassionate, nice, giving. I didn't think of it as serving until I came to Antioch. And then I was like, oh, that's what we call it. It's serving. It's being a servant. And sometimes people don't like that word. I know I've said civil servants like at work before because that's what we are. Nobody wants to be called a servant. Oh, well, I don't serve. Yeah, you do. You serve. You serve whether it's working, you serve the public. When I'm at church, I'm serving at the church. You serve. You may not want to be called a servant, but I don't see it as something bad. I love being a servant. That's what that is my gift. So I just really discovered it throughout the years. I love to cook. I've always been the one that, if there's a potluck at work, okay, Juanette's going to cook. One year I cooked the whole turkey for our Thanksgiving at work. I'm always that person. If you're having a party or something, I got the decorations. I want the event or whatever to go off really good. And I always just thought, as I will say, I'm extra. But my extra is my serving side. I want people to feel included and happy. And even, like I said, even if it's for a brief moment, sometimes you just need that. It's a reset, a recharge, and then you can go on about your day, and maybe that little bit of happiness is going to turn your whole day around. So yeah, I think it's always been in me. I just didn't know what to call it. So now it's got a name. Man, I think a lot of it, this is going to sound, I don't want to sound like I'm chastising people, but getting people to realize that it does take a little bit of sacrifice, but it's worth it. Getting them to see that it does pay off. Like, yeah, okay, you don't have to be like me. You don't have to dress up in an elf costume for Christmas. You don't have to go extra for car shows and stuff. But I got to meet the youth of our church that I don't normally get to meet. I don't get to talk to them. I got to actually talk to them and get to know them. And okay, cool. Figured out one of the young guys likes cars and, just different stuff like that I wouldn't have gotten to know before or, or to experience. And I think a lot of times people see, okay, sign up for 30 minutes of doing this. Okay, yeah, it sounds like, oh, yeah, you're just going to be standing at the door. There's so much more than that. There's the fellowship. Even if you're just standing, holding the door, and you're talking, I like get the chance to talk at the door in the morning with like Jason on Sunday mornings. Okay, it doesn't seem like that should be the highlight of your day, but it's fun. You get to fellowship, and those 30 minutes fly by, and you're like, oh, I'm going to do another 30, and I think it's that. I think people just realizing that you've got to make time. And then when you do, it's so much more rewarding. And don't discount your skills. Nate with property ministry. Oh, do I really know this? Yes, you do. You do so much around our house. You know what you're doing. So even if you think that all I know how to do is cut grass. Cool. We need someone to cut grass. Come cut grass. Don't discount what you think might be trivial when it's not. Go, come forward, use your skills. When we have things that like our pamphlets that Amanda puts together that tells you about the different ministries, read them. Don't just look and say, okay, garden ministry, they garden. No, they also make meals for people at home or those that need them. That's also our garden table in the back. So, hey, you might not want to get your hands dirty, but can you bake some cookies? All right, cool. Bake us some cookies. Can you come in early and help set up? Things like that. Things that people don't always think are serving. 5-10 minutes of your time on a Sunday morning, put some cookies out. Helping out any way that you can. It adds up to be more than what you think. So don't discount your abilities and the things that you have. God gave them to you. Use them. A lot of people use them to make money. Use them to help your church out too. So, go ahead. That was my shameless plug. Don't just use those talents to make money. Bring them to Antioch and we can use them and you can make the church a better place. And yeah, it's just more fun with more people involved. My mother, when I was growing up, was on public assistance. Being a single mom, she didn't want to work all day. She didn't want me coming home and not, being a latchkey kid is what they used to call them back in the day. And so she chose to go the route of, she was like, this isn't really what I want to do, but I'll do assistance until you're old enough to go to school. And so he just always made a way. And I know a lot of it had to do with my mom being meticulous and planning and budgeting, which she did have. But I mean, he gave her that ability. He gave her the opportunities that she had. He also I could just tell he was in my mom with all of her faith, but there was never anything negative. And being a single mom, I know my mom had hard times, but I didn't grow up feeling that. I always grew up feeling love and just warmth and no idea until I got older and I look back and I'm like, oh, those were food stamps. That wasn't like Monopoly money, like, but as a kid, you don't understand that. And just the way my mom carried herself, God was there because nobody else could have given her the strength to get through. I mean, one time it flooded and she threw me on her back and like carried me through flood waters to get home. Like, just the things she had to do. I just know he's there because nobody else was going to be giving her that strength. She was a single mom without a lot of resources, but yet he was there. He guided her through. When I've had my struggles after my mom passing, just with life, he's been there because when I feel like I just don't know what to do, call out to God. Honestly, just like help me, and I usually feel renewed. So yeah, I know he's there. And I always get teary when I talk about my faith, but it's something I can feel. And up until I think probably really we started coming here, I never used to cry about faith. I always thought people that do that, like, okay, the Ned Flanders thing again, like, okay, crazy, born agains, crying, waving hands. And I'm like, no, it's a beautiful thing. It's not tears of sadness. It's tears of happiness and being fulfilled. But, when you're young, you see it as, okay, crazy people crying and, making a hoopla. But yeah, so now, like, when I'm in service and I feel it and I start crying, I'm like, you know what? There's nothing wrong with it. It's you're supposed to let it out. It's not always easy, but but you gotta let it out. So yeah. Because, well, I will say this. One reason is I got told by Mr. Tony Hall a number of times he wanted to hear my story. So this one's kind of for Tony Hall. And also, just let people know that people come to Christ in different ways. While I always knew he was in my life, was he always at the forefront? Unfortunately, no. But am I putting him at the forefront now? Yes. So people see me, and I think sometimes I could probably give off, I shouldn't say this, but an old churchy woman vibe. I do believe in the still kind of dressing up and coming to church. And a lot of people see me and think, man, she's got it put together. And I do. I'm faking it till I make it. We're all there, and I'm not perfect, and I still have a long way to go. And so this way people know, like, yeah, what you see is what you get. Yes, I'm nice and I'm bubbly, but I also have imposter syndrome. I'm also still trying to learn the Bible. I'm still finding my way along with you. So I'm not already there. I'm still trudging along, and we're all hand in hand trying to just do the best we can and live with Jesus, centered in our life. And so just so people know who I am. I'm not, it's not a mystery now. You guys all know the story of Nettie, and, that way they can see, there's just different ways to find your faith. And when it happens, and then you end up at Antioch Christian Church a year in, here doing all sorts of functions, and you couldn't be happier. So thank you. You're welcome.